I do not know how many of you know me. I am Sister Margaret, and I'm originally from India. And now at the moment I'm in London. I work with youth, and that's why I'm so much involved with the youth of the Living Flame in London, Kensington Group, and now with all of you, I'm so delighted to be here. So, the true meaning of Christmas. Wow. So I can only say one sentence: Jesus is the reason for the season. That's it. So if you go around, there are bright lights everywhere. You see, you see gifts wrapped up and stacked up over there. You see Santa Claus. You see, wow, it looks beautiful. It looks beautiful. But where is Jesus? So I, coming from my very Indian perspective, I'm a Catholic and a nun, but I have a lot of Indian background where we believe in God. And I see no God there. I see no God there. So it's we, you and I, we Catholics that have to bring this about and make everybody realize Jesus is the real reason. So, my dear young people, let Jesus be the focus. Let Him be the center of our Christmas. That's the true meaning. So, today's gospel, today's morning gospel, when I heard it, it was about the birth of Jesus. And Father Matt from the Carmelite, Father Matt, he celebrated the Mass for us. And what a beautiful homily he gave. He said, this passage of the Bible, of the scripture, is actually telling us about the identity, he said, of Jesus. And it's given in that passage of Matthew. His name will be Emmanuel, God with us. So, so that is his identity. Jesus is God with us. That's what we are celebrating. We are celebrating the incarnation, the coming of this God, this great, mighty, powerful, loving, merciful God. He's coming down to be with us, to be with us. God with us is the main theme of Christmas. And, the last words that Jesus said before he went back, before he ascended, he said, I shall be with you always till the end of time. So that's it. He's with us. He will be with us. He'll never ever leave us. Yes, in spite of all that is happening in this crazy world of ours, wars, oh gosh, wars everywhere. Climate change, I mean, see the disasters that are happening. My sisters are, my congregation is Spanish, as I said, and this thing in Valencia, oh gosh, it affected them a lot. But how much of the same thing, floods and whatever, happens in India, in Africa? And yes, all this is going on, even in our own country, here in London, this assisted dying thing. And oh gosh, you all know what's happening. But in spite of all this, God is with us. That's the message of Christmas. And He will never, ever leave us. And that reminds me of Julian of Norwich. Beautiful words. I, I have printed them and have kept them. And I look at them every time I feel a bit low. She says, she felt God telling her, I am in your heart, and nothing will make me vacate it. Nothing will make me vacate your heart. I'm there. I'm there forever. I'm stuck there. I will not leave you. And nothing will make me vacate your heart. And that's his message. He's with us. He's with us. My family, for us, Christmas was one of the main feasts. The decorations, the making of sweets, all that was very external, of course. But what my mum taught me, which I never forget, and I, in my turn, taught it to other kids. So she used to say, "Now, baby Jesus is going to be born, and we need to give him gifts, and he's going to be very cold. So what can we do?" So I out of paper, I used to cut out little dresses, little shirts, little somethings, and then I would decorate it with little all kinds of decorations were on those little dresses and shirts and blankets of whatever, all out of paper, of course. And then each little picture or whatever drawing had a significance. So if I made a sacrifice for us at that time as a kid, the sacrifice was I want to run and play with my friends, but I will delay it. I'll go little later. Oh, I don't want to do my lessons so soon. I'll do it later. No, I'll come quickly and do my lessons. These were small sacrifices. Oh, I'm dying to drink water. In India, it's very hot. No, I will delay that drink of water for a little while. So if I each time I did a sacrifice, and I was aware each time I did a sacrifice, then I would color that little drawing. You see, or it was like every time I went to church and I received communion. Okay, that was another little drawing that I colored, and and various things like that. And then on Christmas Eve, 24th, I would put all that in a nice little envelope, which I would color so well. And then I would place it in the crib in the church where everybody was putting money or who knows what they were putting. Mine was something I did myself day after day, the whole of Advent, what my mother taught me. So often we start celebrating or what it is, Christmas from September, and we almost lose Advent. We almost forget what is Advent all about. Advent is preparing for that coming of His. Advent is waiting for Him. And daily we are waiting. So all our life actually is an Advent, waiting for Jesus to come into our lives, to transform us, to change us, to challenge us, to be with us, to console us, whatever. And also, daily is Christmas. It's Christmas every day. If He's born in our hearts, that's Christmas. Uh, when we go for Mass and we participate in the whole Eucharist and we are there when receiving communion, what is happening? Jesus is actually coming into us, becoming part of us, becoming part of our blood and body. His body and blood is becoming our blood and body. It is God with us. So literally, so flesh and blood. I mean to say, it's so. When I think of it, sometimes I get so overwhelmed with it. Every time the priest praises the host and says, "This is my body." Ever since I did a retreat some time back, I am aware. I said he's always here, of course, but he's now really here. Because the priest said, "This is my body." Jesus is here. Jesus is here. That same Jesus that lived 2000 years ago on this earth, that same Jesus that healed and spoke and taught and whatever, he's here in the chapel. And then somebody else had sent me a little video of the presence of Jesus in the tabernacle, in the host when we do adoration, and at the mass when the priest says, "This is my body and this is my blood," of angels, uh, thousands of angels, millions of angels coming into that little chapel or church, because God is there. God is there. They come to adore Him. They help us to adore Him. So, uh, for me, Advent is such a beautiful period preparing for this coming. And mhm, I remember once we make all these traditional cribs. So Joseph and Mary and the road and the rivers and the valleys and the hills, whatever. I was very good at making different kind of cribs. So I made a huge heart, and inside the heart, I just put the statue of baby Jesus. He's born in our hearts. Traditionally, he was born 2000 years ago there. It's true. But today, where is he? He's born in our hearts. And when he's born in our hearts, he's slowly transforming us. And another thought that came to my mind just this evening, I said, what about Mary? What must she have been doing on the in these days, 18 December 2000 years ago? There she was carrying little baby Jesus in her womb. She was so aware of his presence because she could feel him in her womb. She could feel him growing. Uh, and me what? Well, I'm invited to be like Mary. He's within me. I may not carry him in my womb, but I carry him in my heart. And I let him grow in me just as Mary let him grow in her. So how will he grow in me in that sense? I will become more and more like him. I will grow into him. I will become gentle like him, polite like him, merciful like him, caring like him, understanding like him. So I asked Mary, help me and help the young people whom I'm going to talk to today to become more and more like your son, Jesus, his attitudes, his qualities. And I invite you today to search for him, to search for Jesus, just like the shepherds, just like those angels, just like those kings, just like those little animals in the crib, all looked towards Jesus, a little child that looked like nothing, a naked baby that was looked like worth nothing, but they found something in him that was I don't know what it was, something glorious. He was God after all. Yes, yes. Uh, I like to like every birth of a baby in any household, it may be the poorest household, somehow is something magical, is something so beautiful. When parents are expecting a baby and then the baby is born, wow, that is like the climax of their union. And I remembered the words of an Indian poet, Rabindranath Tagore. He said, every newborn child brings a message from God. And the message is this: He's not yet tired of mankind. We sin so much, we do so much wrong, but when He lets a new babe be born in this world of ours, He's telling us this: God is not yet fed up, not yet tired of mankind. So, with this is all I have to share. May the star of Jesus shine in your heart and search for him. Let him be the focus of your Christmas. I don't know how many minutes I spoke, but maybe Father Theo can add to it and others can add to it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Margaret. Thank you, Sister Margaret. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, here I am. Thank you for the talk. Very beautiful talk. It's interesting, Sister brought talked about that, because when we talk about Jesus being born in our hearts, we remember that even from the very beginning, it says God created us in His image and likeness. One of the things that those words mean, created in God's image and likeness. Of course, it means, we are created in freedom, but also the fact that we are made in His image. He lives in us, and the church, many of the church saints, especially the Carmelite saints, would talk about that as the basis of prayer. When we talk about interior prayer, what do I mean by interior prayer? Prayer in which you are focusing, trying to closing your eyes and focusing on the presence of God within you. That is the basis of that God is with us. We are created in His image. We do not necessarily need to go out to search for God, that we can close our eyes and encounter God who dwells within us. So being created in God's image and likeness is what makes that possible. That already, God has already created us. There's something about him in us already. And then there's even more with the birth of Christ, birth and death of Christ, that we have now been redeemed and renewed after our fall. So basically, to say, to be created in the image of God means that God dwells within us. And that means I can close my eyes and be in contact with God's presence within me, God who lives in me and without whom I would not exist. I hope that helps.
Mhm.
There's not much to add. You've actually talked about the heart of Christmas, but what I'm going to do now is to tell a story. Jesus loved telling stories. So I'm going to tell a Christmas story. And this story I'm about to tell is about a man. I'm sure we know of the story, A Christmas Story, a very famous book called A Christmas Story about Ebenezer Scrooge. The man I'm going to introduce you to was not a Scrooge. A Scrooge is like a very, a person who was kind of very stingy. He did not give things out. But this one was not a Scrooge. He was a kind, decent, mostly good man. He was generous to his family, upright in his dealings with other people, but he just didn't believe all that incarnation stuff which the churches proclaim at Christmas time. He didn't believe in incarnation. He was a good man, but he didn't believe in incarnation, all these things Christians talk about. He didn't believe in all that incarnation stuff. It just didn't make sense, and he was too honest to pretend otherwise. He just couldn't swallow the Jesus story about God coming to earth as man. I'm truly sorry to distress you, he told his wife. I'm not going with you to church this Christmas Eve. He said he would feel like a hypocrite, that he would much rather just stay at home, but that he would wait up for them. And so he stayed and they went to the midnight service. Shortly after the family drove away in the car, snow began to fall. He went to the window to watch the flurries getting heavier and heavier, and then went back to his fireside chair and began to read his newspaper. Minutes later, he was startled by a thudding sound, then another, and then another, sort of a thump or a thud. At first, he thought someone was throwing snowballs against his living room window. But when he went to the front door to investigate, he found a flock of birds huddled miserably in the snow. They had been caught in the storm and, in a desperate search for shelter, had tried to fly through his large landscape window. Well, he couldn't let the poor creatures lie there and freeze, so he remembered the barn where his children stabled their pony. That would provide a warm shelter if he could direct the birds to it. Quickly, he put on a coat, tramped through the deepening snow to the barn. He opened the doors wide and turned on the light, but the birds did not come in. He figured food would entice them in, so he hurried back to the house, fetched bread crumbs, sprinkled them on the snow, making a trail to the yellow-lighted, wide-open doorway of the stable. But to his dismay, the birds ignored the breadcrumbs and continued to flap around helplessly in the snow. He tried catching them. He tried shooing them into the barn by walking around them, waving his arms. Instead, they scattered in every direction, except into the warm, lighted barn. And then he realized that they were afraid of him. To them, he reasoned, I am a strange and terrifying creature. If only I could think of some way to let them know that they can trust me, that I am not trying to hurt them, but to help them. But how? Because any move he made tended to frighten them, confuse them. They just would not follow. They would not be led or shooed because they feared him. If only I could be a bird, he thought to himself, and mingle with them and speak their language. Then I could tell them not to be afraid. Then I could show them the way to safe, warm barn. But I would have to be one of them so that they could see, hear, and understand. At that moment, the church bells began to ring. The sound reached his ears above the sounds of the wind. And He stood there listening to the bells at Deste Fidelis, listening to the bells, pealing the glad tidings of Christmas. And he sank to his knees in the snow. End of story. This is the point in which Jesus' disciples will ask, Jesus, what is the meaning of this story? I'm sure you all understand it. Possibly there's no need to explain it. But obviously, it talks about the meaning of Christmas. God had to become one of us so that we would understand what he's telling us and not be afraid of him. He became one of us. He humbled himself to be one of us, to show us the way back to the Father. Thank you.
So I'm just remembering Therese Felicia as a little girl. It was at Christmas time, really, that she had, you can say, her first conversion. There she was being pampered, and all of them wanted to please her. And then her dad says, I mean, she has to grow up. And then she realizes that Christmas is not just receiving gifts, Christmas is giving. Christmas is being like Jesus. Of course, she was a very special person, and after that conversion, there she developed her real purpose of her life. She discovered that Jesus is the center of her life. Her whole life was nothing but Jesus, and she lived it in her day-to-day ordinary life, following his footsteps, doing what he would have done if he were there, and feeling so comfortable in his presence all the time, even when she slept at prayer. She knew that she was loved no matter what. And that's the message of Christmas. He comes to tell us that he loves us, just as that farmer, whoever he was, that man, discovered about when he was trying to help those birds to save them. Until you become that human, become part of the human nature, only then can you really express to those people your deep love. So